Okay, so we were interrupted there briefly by technical difficulties, but I want to continue with the lyrical analysis. In the next verse, I guess it is, there are some interesting lines. When the words are immobile until you sit down, never feel they're worth keeping, they're not easily found. I thought this was a great uh, illustration of the frustration of songwriting, right? Like, it doesn't come easy, but even when we struggle, uh, we have to persist. It reminded me of a recent interview I saw with Andy Partridge of XTC.
XTC, yeah.
Yeah, who himself is a great songwriter, along with his partner Colin Moulding. Although they didn't often write together, I don't think they weren't. Well, Lennon and McCartney didn't always work together either, even though they're a songwriting team. But he said this in an interview I saw, which I thought was great. He said, "Never throw your bits and pieces out. When it comes to music, be a hoarder." So he said, always file away any little piece that seems good, or even if you think it's not good, keep it, because eventually you'll find a place for it. And Iggy Pop said something similar about Bowie. He said he never threw anything away. He kept everything, and he used everything. Eventually, if you work with it long enough, you'll find the proper place for it, and you'll figure out what to do with it. And so, you know, there's a guitar interlude. Well, before that, he says you must really have something jumping, thumping, fighting, hiding away important to say. So you know that there's something you want to say, and you have to be patient. You have to let it come. Don't give up. I mean, sometimes you have to just pull away, set it aside, and wait, and then eventually the words will come. As he says after the guitar interlude, when you sing through the verse and you end in a scream and you swear and you curse because the rhyming ain't clean, but it suddenly comes after years of delay. You pick up your guitar, you can suddenly play. So it might be years later, and this has actually happened to me. um, I have a song that I wrote called Lonely God, and the riff I wrote, maybe 20 years before I finished the song. It was just something I played on the guitar, just fucking about, and then I found a place for it like 2 decades later. And there several examples in my catalog, shall I say, that have the same origin. They just started out as little bits and pieces. I didn't know what to do with them, but I eventually found the proper place for them. And then, of course, I had to fit them with other pieces. But I think that's an important lesson. Songwriters and musicians too. Don't throw anything away.
Just
Eventually
file it under miscellaneous, and then whenever that time is right, whenever the
pull it
gods are
out.
aligned, yeah, there we go.
That's right.
You've got
That's
no
right.
excuse these days, Mark, with all the toys and tricks you've got on your phone, right, for doing these things. In the old days, you physically had to do it. Maybe you still do that. I don't know about your own writing purpose, but
Yeah,
digitally it might be a wee bit easier.
I'm pretty analog. It's for me it really does start with guitar and pen, and the guitar is like a shitty old acoustic, and I have a notebook and a literal pen. I usually type up lyrics later, but it starts with that because I figure if it doesn't sound good, just singing and being accompanied by a shitty acoustic, you probably don't have anything. If you have something that sounds
The
like a
bare bones
song,
of something there. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. At least for now, that's the way I typically work. And sounds like Townsend worked in a similar way, most of the time. Of course, he played around with keyboards some as well, and I have too, but usually it is guitar and pen, which is probably why this song resonates so much with me. Other lyrics could be there's just one thing left in the end, your guitar and your pen. Again, it's just you and the guitar and the blank page and the pen. And there's more description of the frustration in a later verse. And you smash your guitar at the end of the bed. That reminds us of Townshend's guitar theatrics, right? The Who were famous for busting up their instruments and losing their hearing.
Just as a sidetrack here, I think this might have been one of the things that made me really not be such a big fan of the Who. A fan with a small f, maybe if I put it that way, the smashing of the guitars and the drum kits, because I know how much I had to work to get my first drum kit, or how much a new cymbal cost and all that stuff, and then some arseholes doing that, and I'm like, yeah, cool. It's the same when Nirvana did it, right? I was just like, they just pissed me off,
Right.
It had the opposite effect of what it was supposed to do,
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, and I should tell people about this book here, which I read a couple of years ago. For those that are just listening and can't see, it's called The Who Maximum R&B, and it's described as a visual history compiled by Richard Barnes with The Who's full cooperation. And there are a lot of pictures as well as text. Interesting for Who fans with a capital F like me. I'm probably more of a fan than you, but he talks about how, Pete talks about, there are interviews with all of them, of course, but Pete talks about how, they would smash up guitars and then go, like in the evening, right? And then the next day before the next night's show, they would have to go get them repaired. They didn't always buy completely new instruments, they would glue them and tape them and just
I'm sure there might have been some balsa wood fakes going on as well, or something like that, just to kind of give that illusion of destroying things.
Yeah, but it does seem like a luxury, doesn't it? Like
I understand you're angry. I understand the message of your music and what you're trying to say. I don't really dig this.
Yeah, I can't imagine, smashing up my beautiful Fender jazz bass back here. There's no way I would do that. When I dropped I had this beautiful.
Was that an SG you had?
Well, I had an Epiphone bass, it's kind of like I guess it's something that not Ginger Baker, but Jack Bruce would have played. It looks kind of like an SG, but it was an Epiphone bass, really big and thumpy. But what they don't tell you is that it falls over very easily. And so I was on the way to an important rehearsal, and I was taking the metro, and I left it unattended, and it fell over, and the neck just snapped. I mean, the headstock just snapped right off. And it can be repaired, but I've yet to take it in because it's expensive. So I just bought the Fender bass, which I actually like better. It's more versatile. But yeah, the idea of intentionally doing that, nah, I wouldn't really be into that. I don't think it would be so fun to nihilistically smash it up. But that was a different age, and there was an artistic purpose
may or may not have been involved.
I'm sure they were. Sure they were. But anyway, he says you smash your guitar at the end of the bed, then you stick it together and start writing again. So to me, it expresses that frustration. Like sometimes I wanna smash the guitar, or punch a hole in the wall with my fist, or that probably wouldn't happen. I'd probably just break the bones in my hand. But
Yes.
but you feel that frustration, but you can't quit. You have to persist. And this is where that quote by Mishima is maybe not quite on point, because I think more important than talent is persistence. Like creative will, the refusal to quit. I'm Mark Will, so I have to exert my will to get shit done. Yeah, and then the idea is repeated. Inside, you've got something to write. In your hand, you hold your only friend. And, several times that refrain, you're alone, you're alone, you're alone. So from the lyrics, there are several important lessons. Solitude is necessary for the songwriter. The overcoming of frustration and obstacles, the salvaging of scraps, don't throw anything away. Keep your bits and pieces, as Andy Partridge says, and then find a place for them later. So it's a song, it's an allegory of songwriting. It's a songwriter's song. And that, my friends, is why it inspired Guitar and Pen. Okay. Well, should we talk anything to add to that? It's kind of like
I think you've said it all, man.
I'm
less of a songwriter than you are. I do have one or two credits to my name in the dark and distant past, or maybe not too dark, but yeah. We all had to write a song for that one album, the 40 Days made. I can't remember the second one. We all had to write a song each. So that was an interesting exercise.
I remember Jeff's song. What was yours? Was yours on the album?
It was, yeah. My song was called Sinking Ships.
Okay.
I need to go dig it out and have a listen to it again. Yeah, it was pretty good. George was just like, what are these lyrics? And, it was completely like just kind of, we took a different approach to songwriting. But yeah, it was an interesting exercise.
So, well, that's interesting because, even though Townshend was the main songwriter, as you say, sometimes Entwistle would contribute. It was usually Entwistle. But on the, the album, The Who Sell Out, the whole idea was everyone had to contribute equally, but it didn't really work out that way. The idea was each of the four members would contribute an equal number of songs. It didn't work out that way, but everyone did contribute something. Even Moon, even Daltrey.
It can be done.
Yeah, it can be done if you force yourself. I mean, often that's the best way to finish a project. Give yourself an assignment and a deadline. A deadline is important, and just say, okay.
Well, we definitely had that in the last time I
there
did
you
it,
go.
or at least seriously.
There you go. When you're under pressure, you can often reach creative heights that you didn't think you were capable of. But let's talk now about the music. We talked about lyrics, so how about music? Again, as we said, this is from an album in 1978. You can hear the 1978 production values, I guess, but what are they? What are those characteristics? What jumps out for you?
Stylistically, it's that move into the more rock opera sound, I would say, rather than their traditional. If you just came to the Who from the early days of My Generation or The Seeker or Pictures of Lily or whatever it was, that kind of early material, which were kind of standard 3-minute songs or there or thereabouts.
Yes.
Now you're seeing a kind of a leap into this different dynamic, like sonically. Maybe it fitted better with Moon's drumming, that type of sound. There's more space for him to do whatever it was he was doing, but there was definitely more room for him to breathe. And likewise for John Entwistle as well. I think you can definitely hear that. As a bass player, it's a bit of a treat. You're like, okay, here you go. Do what you like. Fill it in as you see fit. There seems to be a lot more room for experimentation.
Well, it seems like the whole rock opera concept goes back to Tommy, I guess. But even before that, as I say, The Who Sell Out was a kind of concept album. And I think that's the one that has a quick one while he's away, right? Which is kind of like a 7-minute rhapsody or orchestral suite, is quite unlike. It's certainly not a 3-minute pop song. There are all kinds of changes in different sections. Quite an ambitious undertaking. So I think by the time we get to 1978, it's just like they're more sophisticated. Like
That's a better
more
way to put it.
Yeah, there's more keyboards and strings, and the arrangements are more
lush,
orchestral, lush. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the contribution of the producer, or I think he was the producer, Glyn Jones, who had worked with all the greats, the Beatles, the Stones, Zeppelin, and then he went further on to work with numerous other huge acts. But he definitely contributed a lot. The addition of Rod Argent on keyboards from the Zombies.
Exactly. Yeah. And the Zombies, for those that don't know, gave us, and actually Rod Argent wrote the song "She's Not There."
She's Not There. It's just such a good song. And my wife Injun knows the line off by heart. No, who's your name? No, who's your name? What's your name? No, because I get the line wrong.
Why should I care? Right? Why should I care?
What's your name? Who's your daddy?
Oh, is that in this one?
She's not
okay.
There.
Okay.
Or is that time of the season? I can't remember. But it's one or the other. Maybe we can edit this for me making an ass of it.
I mean, his contribution to this record is pretty significant.
She's not there, I think.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look up. I listened earlier today, but I didn't hear the daddy part. I'll have to revisit that.
Or is it time of the season? I should have prepared this bit a bit more thoroughly, but his keyboard sound is great.
Well, the important thing is he wrote that song, for the Zombies. He doesn't sing it, but he is the songwriter. So he is, in his own right, an accomplished songwriter, and you can hear it on guitar and pen, especially a fantastic keyboard player. I mean,
right up to the last note in the song.
Yeah, there's some beautiful runs and really nice arrangements. And I guess he's doing both the synths and the piano. I mean, maybe it's a piano synthesizer, but it sounds like a real piano, in addition to, there's some like synthesizer strings. I guess he's doing all of that, but his work on this song in particular, and I guess he played on other tracks on the album, it's really like he's the fifth member of the band, like it's
it elevates things.
Yeah, very, very significant. Rod Argent of the Zombies. So I guess the lesson from there is choose your collaborators wisely, and if you want to add texture, add keyboards. They do things that guitars cannot do. But what do you think about Townshend as a guitarist? Like, forget about him as a songwriter. We've covered that. What about him just as a guitarist in the band The Who?
Yeah, it's an interesting point of discussion, I think. Maybe his opinion of himself is he thinks he should be better thought of as a musician, songwriter, band leader, creative genius, mastermind of all sorts. He seems to have a bit of a chip in his shoulder, generally speaking, about the way he's The public have taken other people into their hearts more than they ever would him, kind of thing, and this seems to piss him off more and more as time goes on. Where's my knighthood? I'm just thinking along these kind of lines. As a guitar player, of course, if you were just learning guitar, he would be a great one to look at stylistically. Rhythmically, he's very kind of less is more in that sense. You just get, okay, here's a big power chord coming, or here's a windmill, and then it's like this kind of, he keeps things quite simple.
Rhythmically, yeah. But I mean, he's a fantastic picker too, like his lead work is greatly underrated, I think.
Just before we started recording this afternoon, I was listening to some of the just whatever it was on YouTube, and I wanted to find some songs after 85 or live performances after, let's say the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the one that came up was Love Rain O'er Me from Live Aid. Oh, what a version that is, man. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I was lucky enough to see them in 2002. And how old were they then? 60? I don't know. But even then, when they're old men, and this is after Entwistle had died, right? So
right, yeah.
it was
in the Vegas hotel room, or
yeah, it was on that tour, I think, that he died. So I was still in Houston then, and before they made it to Houston, Entwistle died. I think I already had tickets, and I was like, are they even going to come here? They carried on. They did the show. And I mean, watching him, even at that advanced age, I mean, I should be careful because I might be 60 soon myself. So how
fingers crossed.
Yeah. How advanced is it really? But I mean, even then, I was trying to imagine, like, who would be more exciting to watch play the guitar other than maybe Hendrix. It's like he's really, like, thrilling to watch,
I think that's definitely one of the things that separated them live. Having never seen them live myself, but from what I've read, people have spoke to the difference, let's say, with Zeppelin, with a band with a similar heavier sound, or going in a slightly different direction, but maybe their personas on stage were a bit or less energetic collectively. There was four different things going on at this time. But I wrote down some things actually about Townshend as a performance-wise. Energetic, angry, full-blooded live performances. These were just things coming into my head as I was watching and listening over the last few days. Exhausting and frenetic. And I think when you combine this watching Moon and listening to Keith Moon at this, and then you're just like, well, it's like an overload, which generally can work as a positive, right? If you're a fan of this, definitely. But on the other hand, it might be a small doses kind of thing. You can handle it only in smaller doses.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be exhausting to watch all that that energy exploding on the stage, but visually it's interesting because you've got the maniac behind the drums, and then you've got this guy with the windmill guitar playing, jumping around. You've got Daltrey swinging his microphone around, and then you've got Entwistle just standing there but playing these thunderous, heavy, and melodic bass lines. Townshend talked about how Entwistle was kind of like a lead guitarist in that sense, But
I think if there's one thing you would, that's an interesting point. There's one thing that you'd like to point out to people who are maybe not that familiar with the Who, or if you want to listen to a bit more in detail, go listen to the bass lines, because Keith Moon and Townshend's sound generally steal the limelight, I would say. But if you dig a little deeper, or you focus on the bass playing, you hear some great playing in there.
Well, just listen to My Generation. That's all. That's all bass, and it's. I mean, who had heard something like that before? You know, like whenever that came out, 60 what? 4, 5?
4, probably something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, those little riffs that he's playing are crazy, and they make the song. That's the whole song, you know.
Right.
Other than Daltrey's, speech impediment, vocal delivery, right? With the stuttering.
Right. Yes. Don't know how much more of that we could cancel today, but yeah, the Who are an interesting band, just where they started and where they end up, because they're still playing, right? They played in Scotland earlier in July or something like that. They played in the centre of Edinburgh, like an outdoor show. But I don't know, it might be one of these musical ventures that they've become the thing that they set out not to be, or the thing that they rallied against the most. That's what it seems to be. Or they keep coming back and topping up their pensions. I don't know. I just don't feel much love for it anymore. It's just, all right, we know we can make a shitload of money and people still want to see us and hear it. So
hope I die before I get old. They didn't quite manage that, did they?
No. I don't know. These are just some of my observations and stuff. And on one hand, I admire them still playing and having the capability or musical ability to still be able to do that and still recreate some of these great songs that people will treasure forever. But there might come a point when you're just thinking, yeah, there's a much more point in this.
Well, in the meantime, the Stones are producing new material, you know. They're not just rehashing the hits from the past. They're not just doing these jukebox shows. They're actually writing and recording, and presumably they'll perform these new songs. And I don't know if you listen to the new single "Angry," but it's not bad, you know. It's not.
I like the verses. The chorus was a bit. It's kind of.
But you know, they're still doing new stuff. You know, it's not just like the never-ending
the riffs
tour.
Right there, straight in the centre. You know. I saw the video actually. The video's quite cool. They're driving down like Hollywood, Sunset Boulevard or whatever it is, and it's all kind of a bit less as well. It was alright.
With a girl that's young enough to be Sir Mick's granddaughter, or maybe great granddaughter by this time, but it's all good. Well, I mean, I think I've covered pretty much everything I want to say.
Maybe if I can ask you then, were you a bit inspired by Townshend's performance delivery or his stylistically, either on record or live?
Well, I would say yes. I mean, I think the Who were one of my earliest inspirations. I had a cousin who loved Townshend and the Who, and every time I would visit my aunt and uncle and, you know, go hang out with my cousin in his room, I would just listen to all his records. Even if he happened to not be there, I would just,
just help yourself.
All of his LPs were there, you know, and so I listened to, and he would tell me stories. He's like, yeah, you know, they wrote Boris the Spider in 10 minutes when they were drunk. Like he knew all the Who
top
lore.
Trivia,
yeah, all the legends, all the, you know, myths about the band. And so I think that was my first exposure. And then I remember I had that on cassette. I had the Who's greatest hits that, you know, had the picture of the Union Jack. I had Meaty, Beady, Big and Bouncy, which was a compilation album.
Yeah.
And I always loved songs like The Seeker. I always thought that
song.
was deep, man. As a teen, I was like,
when I asked Bobby Dylan, and these other kind of references
the
in the
Beatles,
song.
and then Timothy Leary, who's that? And then later I found out, I think I asked my mom, hey, who's Timothy Leary? She's like, oh, he's that horrible LSD guy. I'm like, oh, I want to find out more about this.
makes note to self,
Yeah, let's read more. Let's go to the library and find out more about this. So, yeah, they were a gateway to other things, but also I very much appreciated them for what they themselves were and what Townsend himself was. I liked his solo stuff too, like I remember when White City came out, Face the Face, and
have you seen the cover of Roger Daltrey's, maybe it's his first solo album, it might just be called Daltrey, I'm not too sure, but it's him superimposed as a kind of unicorn or a minotaur or something like that, man.
Yeah.
Go check out the album cover. It's
Ride a Rock Horse, isn't it? Is that what it's called?
Could well be. But it's like half man, half horse on the album cover.
Yeah.
And he's got the big kind of mane of hair and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's all about 1970s and over the top.
Right. Yeah, I've seen it for sure. But, I liked Daltrey's solo stuff from the 80s, like After the Fire, and he did a song called Quicksilver, and guess who wrote those songs for him? He didn't write them himself. Pete wrote them,
I was going to say his buddy.
Yeah, and gave them to him. And that's an interesting relationship because, Townsend's writing the songs, but in most cases, sometimes he would sing them himself, but in most cases, they're being interpreted by Daltrey, with whom he has this brotherly yet often acrimonious relationship, So that is an interesting kind of mix there. It produces some interesting results.
Absolutely.
Probably for the better. Because it's just another ingredient,
What would you say the weakest links are of the band, or were, in this original lineup?
Well, Townsend always said that it was Daltrey. Like, it took him a while to come into his own. It was like around the Tommy period. He said he noticed that around that time, Daltrey began to sing and perform with his entire body. Like, he would give more of himself to the audience, and he really came into his own then. Before, he was just kind of like an Elvis impersonator, like he just wanted
an Eddie Cochran lookalike kind of thing,
Yeah, he was in a band so that he could get girls and get rich, right? But he really developed as an artist around the time of Tommy.
The persona.
Mm-hmm. Well, he became Tommy. He was Tommy, right?
Yeah.
And but Townsend said, like, that's when he learned to give more of himself in his performances, and he sang with all of his body, which, that's a different thing. You can hear it. I guess it lends itself to the more operatic style that was more and more what their music was about, with Tommy, Quadrophenia, and pretty much everything that came after. I mean, everything after that, even Who Are You, is a kind of failed Tommy, and that's what Who's Next was supposed to be, a project called Lighthouse, right? And then that concept never worked, so they just...
Apparently, was this the one that was too complicated that even Townsend couldn't remember the beginning or the middle or the end of it? It was just like...
He couldn't explain it. He couldn't explain it. The idea was to involve the audience in the creation of the songs or something, and they tried it. They rented a studio or a theater, and I don't know. It just didn't work out. So they had all these songs that were supposed to be, you know, thematically unified in this concept or under the heading of this concept, but didn't work out. So they just said, okay, well, we still have 10 great songs or however many it is, so let's just put them on an album and we'll call it Who's Next. So that, I mean, that's another example of not throwing away your bits and pieces, right? Like if it doesn't work out the way you originally expect, you may still have something.
There's something of substance there.
Yeah,
to
there's
use.
something you can use. Just you just have to repurpose it. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm out of ideas. I'm out of inspiration. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
What are your thoughts of Keith Moon as a drummer? As someone who also plays in the rhythm section like yourself, what do you think of his approach or his style? If we take out his rather maniacal personality, or at least perceived maniacal personality, I don't know if he was bipolar or he had ADHD or whatever you might diagnose it as today, or whether that was actually what he was, he was playing the part. But yeah, I'm curious to hear it from a songwriter's point of view, stroke part of the rhythm section, what you think of him.
Well, I mean, I love that style. I love that energy. I think he played like one would expect his persona to play. Like he's a beast, he's an animal. He is a maniac. And it's not just his stage mannerisms, but the way he plays. He's all over the place, So I like that style. It's like high energy. It just it gives the songs an extra punch and
yeah, that boost. Right?
Yeah, a boost. But interestingly, I learned that from this book and then some of the interviews. You know who his favorite band was? Like his
You're going to say something
inspiration?
surreal now. Go on, I'll let you tell us.
The Beach Boys. He was a huge Beach Boys fan. Like he loved it. I think he, like when they first found him, he was like wearing, Beach Boys type clothes. He wasn't really a mod, and they're like, "Who the fuck is this guy? He can't be in our band. We're mods. We're high numbers, And so, but then when they heard him play, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. I think we can use this guy." But that was his original inspiration, the Beach Boys. He always liked singing harmony. You can hear him singing backups on various songs. He loved doing that.
Do you think he was maybe a classic case though of he just burnt himself out, like literally?
Absolutely. I think he was destined for that. He didn't quite make the 27 club, but
not far off.
Not far off. I mean, yeah, he was self-destructive. Of course, he was an alcoholic and probably doing pills with the booze. I'm sure, like all of those guys, Bonham or whoever. Oh, their women and friends talk about them as lovely guys, except when they get drunk, then they become complete monsters. So it would probably get tiresome. Like, how many times can you throw a fucking TV out the window of a hotel into the swimming pool? Like, that might be amusing once or twice or even 10 times, but like every night, I couldn't keep up with that. If I'm the guy that's got to write the songs, I need my solitude and quiet and my guitar and pen. I can't keep up with the boozers that are like running through the hallways.
The nihilists who are running around.
Yeah, running through the hallways naked, chasing 10 groupies. I mean, every now and again that might be fun, but I just don't know. You know, it was inevitable that he would burn out. But in terms of his musicianship, I mean, he's got a unique style, and it's just it's powerful. It's quite busy, you know. Like, could he play like a simple little pattern? I don't think
Could you
so.
play a bit less? You know?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think so. You know, in his case, less is not more. More is not enough. You know.
No, yeah, I think so. If I can plug my own podcast here, I went back through the archives to last year when I did a great episode with a professional drummer, jazz musician, songwriter, composer. He does all of this stuff for his bands. Robert Castelli, his name is, and Robert. We talked about his drum journey, and as drummers, it was kind of interesting to talk about that. Talked about lots of other stuff too, but one of the clips I went back through and had a look at the episode, and I found we started talking about, asked him what he thought of Ginger Baker, and had he seen now it's called The Fabulous Mr. Baker, Dangerous Mr. Baker.
Yes, I know.
That
I've seen
one,
it.
right?
Right.
So we talked about that, and then we started talking about Keith Moon, and I asked him what he thought. And yeah, we shared some ideas back and forth, but Robert put it like he was really innovative at the time. That kind of chaotic style, no one else was really doing it. And if you were in his shoes as let's say, an 18 or 19-year-old guy from buttfuck nowhere, and then you're kind of transported into this other planet, that's what it seems like. That you know, how do you deal with that, or how do you react to that? And yeah, these were some of the things that we talked about in the episode, but it's a short clip. I should send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to hear other drummers talk about it. You kind of respect him, might not particularly be a great fan of the more is more approach. You know? So it takes all sorts though, man. I think that's the joy of it, right?
Well, it depends on the song. I mean, on my forthcoming solo album, I've got this Who type song, you know, like I wrote it as such. I very much had a Who vibe in mind as I wrote it. It's called Cancel Me, so it's kind of like it's somewhat inspired by We're Not Gonna Take It, you know, that Who song. And so there's, I don't know, lyrically it's there are echoes of Townshend, and the guitar part is very much in the Who mode, and there are suspended chords like Townshend is so fond of using. And so, you know, when I taught it to the other musicians, and especially the drummer, those were the reference points, right? Like this is a Who, you know, punkish, modish, I don't know, Kinks flavored song, but mostly it's the Who. And so the drummer's like, well, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, do your Keith Moon impression. And he knew exactly what that was. And so when we fleshed out the arrangement, that's what he gave me, and he fucking nailed it. I mean, it's great, and it's over the top, and that's the point, right? Because
Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, the song is Cancel Me, and okay, if you don't like it, then cancel me. You think it's too much, cancel me. But that's what you get, you know, that's what this is. So do I want that on every song? No, you know, that it wouldn't be appropriate. But it's certainly,
You only need to ask the drummer once, maybe that's enough, you know.
yeah, I don't want that for every track, you know. Like I gave him a different reference point for each song. Like that song was Keith Moon,
Yeah.
but you know, another song was maybe Charlie Watts or Ringo or, you know, Bonham or something else. So
As a drummer, though, like you work yourself around playing to the song, and I'm guessing Keith Moon is no different. He's just playing it in a slightly different way than, can you do it like this, or can the less is more approach? It just seemed to be he had a lot more scope, or a lot more room for this, or the other guys in the band had a lot more patience for this, or maybe it just became a thing, it just became their sound.
I think that's what it was. Like, no matter, it always seems to be the same in a way. Like, he always plays. I think he actually said, I'm just now remembering a quote. He's like, I'm the best Keith Moon type drummer in the world. He said that about himself. So, I think he just developed a style, and like everything he played was in that style. Nothing wrong with that, but
no.
I like, personally, I prefer a little bit more diversity and eclecticism and subtlety. Like I don't want the maniacal.
It's almost like he's not playing a beat in a lot of the songs. Whereas as a drummer, this is what your bread and butter is. These are the things you're taught.
He's playing fills.
If you learn in a band, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what can we say? That's what they did. It worked for them. I think it's good to listen to other things, but for me, they have always been an important band. I mean, I'm not saying they're beyond criticism. Remember, Townshend smacked Abby Hoffman in the head with his guitar at Woodstock. That wasn't too nice. And they allowed I Can See for Miles to be used for a U.S. Air Force recruiting ad. That's pretty fucking disgusting, but...
there's a whole generation brought up on CSI, right? Whatever, Miami, Vegas, and all that. And they're just like, "Oh, what's this?" So maybe from that point of view, they've broadened their horizons musically. Maybe if we look at it,
and commercially,
the
Who really did sell out. I mean, he made a joke about that in the show in 2002 that I saw. Townshend did. Like, he got on the mic and said, I wrote this, I think it was when he's like between or before my generation and something else, He's like, I wrote this song in my bedroom when I was 15 or 16 years old. And who would have guessed that later I could sell it to soap companies or something like that, So you have to make a living one way or another, I guess.
True.
But they definitely didn't die before they got old. Well, Moon did, to be fair, but
yeah, I was good. Yeah, well, in a matter of speaking.
Yeah, but anyway, I think we've done a pretty thorough analysis of Guitar and Pen, this Pete Townshend song on the 1978 album "Who Are You," and I hope that songwriters, musicians, music producers, and music fans, lovers of The Who, lovers of rock and pop music, have learned something that will deepen their appreciation and help them hone their craft. And on that note, I guess we'll close it out.
I'm waiting on my cue. Okay, Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's do it again soon.
Cheers.